when I matched was a little bit time ago, but it was still difficult and still very scary. So believe me, I know and understand what you guys are going through, and I hope that these little tips will help you, um, understand the process and feel a little more, um, easy about how it goes. You never get to like completely relax when this process is happening, but you also get to understand that when you're doing things correctly, your chances can be increased. Um, so I want to start by also saying that I really think that IMGs are extremely important to the care in the United States. And um, I, because of that, and because my match was really, really, really difficult, I, after matching, started a mentoring group where I sometimes take between 3 and 7, sometimes 7 is too much, but like mentees a year where I will help you um, do some interview training, review your personal statement, your CVs, um, and that has helped me to obtain a lot of experience in how this application season should go and what are the things that helped you. I also want to say that this is also based in my own experience. In when I did my match, where it was really difficult for me because being an IMG, I had no idea how it went and how to make my application stand out, but also through helping other people who have helped in the past 4 years, I've learned tricks on and things that are helpful. So nothing I say is like God's word. Nothing I say is perfect or the complete truth. It's just based on my experience. And you know, there are other people with other opinions, and they're all valid. I just happen to have a breadth of experience that helped me tell you a story of things or how things happen generally for us in this field. So the first kind of like set of questions was related to the overall strategies for matching into PM&Rs and IMG. And there are a lot of approaches to that, but it should be similar to what the American graduates have. You have to consider and be very realistic and honest about your scores, right? This specialty every year is getting more competitive, which means people with better and better scores are applying, right? So if you haven't taken your steps, you need to study hard. You need to make sure you're taking practice tests. You need to build up the endurance for the test and making sure that you are going to have a score that is competitive. And this is, very sad because a score doesn't define you as a physician. I as you just saw, have been extremely successful in residency. Fortunately, I got hired in my attending position 2 years before even being considered for it. So they really, really liked me, and I did really well in residency. I got awards many times, and I did horribly in my scores. Like I didn't fail, but almost basically failed the steps. So it doesn't define you as a physician. But unfortunately, when you sit on the other side and you're in the committee that reviews applications, we get tons and tons of applications. And since the past few years, we've been getting even more, which makes it really difficult for us to do a very holistic review. So sometimes we do need to rely on the score to try to screen the people that, are going to have better applications, unfortunately. So if you're in that stage of the process, just make sure you're doing your best to try to get the best score possible to get a little bit ahead of the game. The second aspect of the strategy is just like other people, like the medical students in the US do, is you have to try to get out there and try to get letters, right? When we're reviewing the applications in the committee, we want to hear from some people that we know that are already physiatrists or even trained with us, that you have qualities that will help us train you as a physiatrist. So if someone that I know personally is recommending me you to come to my program, I'm gonna be extremely happy to take you because this person knows what my program is like. And so Letters are extremely important. And it's not just going to a rotation and having an okay performance, it's being proactive to get a good letter. We can do many things to make sure our letters are good. One of the things that I promote a lot towards that is be very proactive into asking for a letter. And I'm going to give you an example. If I am your attending and I'm an EMG attending, that's what I'm going to do in Montefiore. And we are doing EMGs, and maybe one of the cases you did with me was something a little rare, or something very interesting, or maybe it was something very, very stereotypical, but you did a lot of work into learning what happened there, or maybe the interaction with the patient was really interesting for you, or you learned a lot on how, we work through the case together. When you ask me for a letter, you can tell me, hey, Dr. Fuentes, I love the experience. I learned a lot, but also this case with this person made me learn this, or I had this interaction, or I did this review and I learned specifically about what we were working during the rotation. When I write your letter, I'm going to probably add something more personalized. If you ask something directly like that, I'm going to recommend SJ because when we were sitting in the EMG lab, we saw a patient with carpal tunnel, and she really went and studied and did her best. And I'm saying something much more personalized than just a generic letter saying, she was sweet, she was on time, she tried hard, right? And that's going to be really helpful. Okay, so be proactive on how you request for your letters, and make those connections, right? We are not just the attending sitting there, being perfect. We're human beings. So if you make like an emotional connection with us, a professional connection, of course, this is a professional environment, we're working. But if you have things in common with us, or like if there is something that was helpful to you through the rotation, make us aware when you're asking for the letter so that we can make a better letter. Okay? So those I think are like the major strategies on itself. And I know sometimes that could be really difficult for IMGs. Um, Although generally IMGs do better than non-IMGs for their scores, the letters is one of the major issues, but it can be corrected by being very proactive. Okay, we're gonna move forward with scores, and this is going back a little bit to what I already said about scores. It's really unfortunate, uh, but my program, I'm gonna disclose like certain things that happen, and they're pretty like common knowledge, but I'm gonna talk about what I know, which is my program. We get 600 to 700 applications a year, right? So we do our best to try to screen through all applications, but sometimes that's impossible, right? And so the best way to rank or classify or like filter our applications needs to be the score. This is way more common in specialties like medicine or surgery or family medicine because they get 5,000 applications. So it's literally impossible. That's why there's cutoffs. Um, but as the specialty gets more competitive, it's important to do that. And as I said a little earlier, that's not my strongest feature. Like I cannot give you terrible advice on how to do great on your scores, but consistency on the studying is one of the things that's very important. Building up endurance to take the test. This is a very difficult test. You have to sit for many hours. If you are unfamiliar with it, it's going to be impossible to score well. So take different practice tests in sequence so that you build up to the experience. Like I remember sitting for my test and like being extremely fatigued and not reading through the questions at a moment because I did try a lot to build up for the test, but it was hard. Um, and um, and know kind of what's the average that you should be getting, right? Use the BME test to kind of like set a target of what the score that you want. Because, if you have a good score, you will get into the first filter, which is this. Clinical experience rotations and LORs. We I was already addressing this in the major strategies, but um, I think I want to tell you something that's very important about the clinical experience of the rotations is try to get rotations the best way you can, however you can, make all the connections you can, send emails, you know, someone's gonna reply. Um, the best quality of rotation is in an academic center, of course, because someone who's a teacher of the specialty, going to be a better letter writer, and there might open the chance for you to come to an interview just because you went there. But even if that's not a possibility, look for another physiatrist that's going to recommend you as a physiatrist. If you're in private practice, doesn't mean that you're unable to recognize the qualities of someone who should be in training. So if that's all you have, make sure that that's what you're doing. It's very important to have letters from people from the US, and you should do your best to do that, at least one or two. But if you went to residency in your own country, if you had experience in the specialty in your own country, and you have letters from that people, that can be very helpful, especially if it's within the academic environment in your country, right? Um, my letters were from two physiatrists. One of them was the program director of the rehab residency in Colombia, and she wrote very beautiful letter for me, and that was very helpful because I didn't have letters from physiatrists in the US. But she wrote something really meaningful about my experience as a rotator when I was a medical student back in my home country, and the letter was very helpful. So don't be afraid to ask letters within your country if you know they're going to be good. Tricks about that could be that, maybe foreign letter writers don't know how letters are in the US. So if you have mentors within the US, ask them how letters are written, try to read or look for letters online on how they're written. And if a letter writer, this will happen, asks you to write the letter, make sure you're including those experiences that were significant through the rotation that are going to make it more personalized. N no letter is good if it just says, oh, they were punctual, oh, they were nice, oh, they did their job. Letters are good when they're personal, when they can tell specific details about how good you think you're fit for the specialty, how good of a human being or a physician you are or are going to be. So the better details with clinical examples come, like what I was saying before of someone who did like my example in the EMG lab with SJ, that's going to be a way like more consistent letter. Okay, so it's don't disregard letters from people from your own countries because they can be helpful. And maybe a trick is like if this English is not their native language, you can ask them, like you can tell them, I can review it. I can send it to someone else who speaks the language. We can check it all together. It doesn't have to be like putting the burden on this attending from your own country who doesn't know how this process is. I helped write my letters from people from my own country, and they were, helpful. Okay. Um, let's move on to networking. As you already know, networking is very important. If you know someone who drops your name with a program director, if you know a program director is going to help you, right? And it's difficult to build up opportunities for networking when you are not immersed in the system, maybe when you're not in the US. So if you have opportunity to meet other physiatrists that are American, do your best to do that. There are communities like this one. Both AAPM&R and AAP have opportunities for people both in the US and outside the US to participate in committees that have relationship to the specialty and not just those two um, like um, communities. Also, other communities um, can be a source of network. AMSSM, the Asia community of people from spinal cord injury, the pain societies, they have tons of, groups, NAS or whatever. You can join one of those and try to participate actively in that society to show your commitment to the specialty and to network, to meet other physiatrists who might be willing to take you on a rotation, who might be willing to write a letter for you, who might be willing to show you or read your personal statement and give you some feedback. So do your best to try to extend your wings to whatever you can do in the networking. And I know it's very difficult, and I know sometimes you feel like you're intruding, but we want to help you. People who are in these committees are committed to help you, right? Like I'm here because that's what I like to do. I like to help IMGs. And so like if you come and reach out to me, like I'm not gonna be upset. You know what I mean? It might take me a while to respond. It might be a little difficult sometimes, but I will try to do my best. So everybody who's in these committees are going to have the same perspective as I did. And so it will be okay to reach out and to try to participate as much as network. It is also very good in smaller spaces. So if you are within a rotation in a city that has a local PM&R community, like New York Society of PM&R, try to go to the meeting, try to attend the event or the lecture. And at the end, people stay, people network, people talk. I can tell you from personal experiences that I've gotten some of my mentees rotations like that. One time last year, I met someone who needed some help, and we met in one of these meetings. And the next meeting, one of the program directors on one of the New York programs, who's a like friend of mine, he knows me, was giving the lecture. I introduced it to them, and he got a rotation. Then he got a beautiful letter from him. So being active in these small communities, if you go to APMR or AAP is amazing, but there's tons of people, and sometimes it's very difficult to have face time with this important people, but in the smaller societies, it might be a little bit easier. So just ideas on the networking. Research and extracurricular activities. I want to say that, and we were having a small discussion before starting this. Yes, we love to have research, and that's always important. And if you can do a lot, look for cases, present, bring them to the conferences. Not only shows that you're committed to the specialty, but you like the research if you like it, and then is open for opportunities for networking, right? If you have a poster and the program director comes to the poster and is interested, if you have a poster at EMG, I'm gonna come to your poster. Like I like EMG, right? So like it's going to be like I'm gonna talk to you and I'm gonna be like amazed that you are interested in what I love, right? Or if you do something on performing arts, believe me, I'm gonna be standing in front of your poster, right? So it will be an opportunity to network with someone who might influence your career. But they're not mandatory. And still in our specialty, we have some kindness towards that, right? So you don't have to have tons of research to be a physiatrist. A lot of people don't have any, and that's completely fine. So just think that sometimes more than the research itself, it's many more opportunities to meet people who have the same interest as you that are going to help you within your path towards being a physiatrist. So just think about that. Both research and extracurricular activities should align to what you want to do, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about this in let's talk about it here. CV preparation, right? When I sit on this side of the screen and I'm reviewing the applications, I only get basically three pieces of paper. Your application, your personal statement, and the letters in a bundle. So I just read a document of letters. So the more I get to know you as a human being and your qualities that will lead me to think that you're going to be a good physiatrist, the better it's going to be for me to call you to an interview, right? So I want consistency, right? And that's very, very important in this specialty. If you show commitment to the specialty and consistency, I will like your application and I will most likely call you to meet you in person. I want to be intrigued, right? So all research and extracurricular activities should try to align. And I'm not saying that before applying to residency, you should know whatever you want, every specific detail of what you want to do in your career. And so everything should match perfectly. That's not what I'm saying. But if you have some idea, if you're looking for something specific, if you're telling me something specific about yourself, and that is portrayed within your application in every single thing, I will be intrigued to call you to an interview. And I'm gonna give you my own example, right? I'm an opera singer. And I worked as an opera singer when I was in Colombia, and I still do, and I continue to do it through all my career. Um, but that was not in my CV as my experiences, and it was in my personal statement because it was important for me that they knew who I was. And being an opera singer was extremely important as part of my identity. Plus, also talks about the qualities of um, my personality for rehabilitation. Like when you sing in an opera, you work as part of the team, you're integrated in the team, and that's what physiatrists do. We are part of the team. We are integrated in the team. So I use that as a part of labor to tell something very specific about my personality. Um, but it was all consistent. It was everywhere in my application. So every single person I met through the interview cycle asked me about opera. All my interviews, every single one of them had to have a conversation about performing arts medicine and opera just because it was there, right? So if your CV is enticing of any specific feature of you, is if is whatever it's saying about your research, about your activities, about your experiences, about your extracurricular activities, is telling me something about you, who you are, and what are your qualities, and hopefully your qualities that align to for you to be a physiatrist, I'm gonna be enticed to call you to an interview, right? So just think about that when you're writing your CV, when you're preparing your personal statement, because and even when you are doing certain things in life, is being a hiker something that's gonna help me through rehab? Yes. Is being a cooking aficionado, something that's going to help me through rehab. Think how it could be and how it's portrayed through your application and how it works. It's having spinal cord injury going to help you through rehab. Of course it is. Like if you have happen to have that, I met one of the TBI fellows last year and he had TBI and now he's a TBI board certified, physiatrist. Of course, he understands what the experience is more than anyone else, and that was in every single step of his application that he survived TBI when he was a kid, and that showed how much he understood the process of rehabilitation. So just think about how every single aspect of yourself can be portrayed in your CV on your application itself from a professional standpoint so that I can, get to know you. Okay, timing and logistics. Um, you have to have this memorized. For us, it comes with the extra layer of getting the ECFMG certification. Um, it is ideal that you have your ECFMG certificate before September. So everything you do should be aligned with that. I got mine in December and I was very stressed and I didn't have a lot of interviews because of that. But if that's going to happen, if you're gonna have a little bit gap of that, make sure you send emails to the people you're applying to tell them, hey, by the way, I did this. I within my process, I got my ECFNG certificate and I took my step 3. So when I had Monty interview me in December and I had we had like a social mixer kind of thing in January, all through Zoom, of course, because my year was COVID year. So like we were really through Zoom. Um, I let them know, like, hey, by the way, I already passed step three, like just letting you know that my application is already better than what it was when we met for the first time. Um, but in general matter, you should have everything by September. Start working on your personal statement early so that it's the best version it could be. Have several versions, review it a lot of times. So start working July, June in it. Make sure you are good into getting your letters on time. Send emails regularly. It seems very annoying to annoy an attending to send a letter, but you have to do it. Otherwise, you're the one who's screwed. So send tons of emails. Make sure people upload your letters. Be kind and polite in all your communications, of course, but like, oh, hey, Dr. Fuentes, I'm sorry, but I noticed you haven't uploaded my letter. I'm really looking forward to see what you wrote about me, or like, your letter is very important because my experience with you was really good. So please, would you mind uploading your letter as soon as you can, as long as your time, your schedule allows it, being very polite but insistent. Hey, Dr. Fuentes, I noticed again that you haven't put your letter. Remember how important your letter is for me. Don't, next week, try till it's done because everybody's busy. Um, and and having some alignment with the conference sometimes can be helpful. Not that you have to go to a conference, but if you have the opportunity to go to AAP, it's going to be networking. To go to AAP&R, there's going to be networking. So if you have the money, it's within your budget, if you're planning on it, it's going to help you. I've, you know, taken my mentees face to face with my program director and other program directors at AAP because I believe in them. I'm trying to help them, and that's the only way for them to do that. And, they match. So if you're there, politely and at the appropriate time, you should look for those opportunities, and they are helpful. Okay, interview preparation. As everything in this process, you have to inform yourself. When I was doing this, I had YouTube, and that was it. No one told me how this was, and it was crazy. I was obsessed watching people in YouTube doing tutorials on what were the questions, what were the behavioral questions, tell me about yourself, all that crap. And there was no, someone else nice telling me what was specific or what should I have said. So it's all about looking for resources. I do recommend to practice your interviews with someone, hopefully someone who will give you feedback on what you're saying, especially when English is not your first language, because, you know, I was telling Dr. Rand, my program director, today that, my English declines in this kind of test. We just had the OSCE, which is the simulation for the oral boards, and you see me here talking nice, and then the question comes, and I'm like, it's terrible. So be prepared to be under stress, and those interview preparations should be like that, like should be a little tough, so that you can handle the stress a little bit better. Um, I'm sure if you're within a rotation and someone, if you're telling them you're going to have interviews, someone will offer to do it. But like that's one of the things that I do. We do mock interviews, and I tell you what I want to hear, how I want to hear it. What are you saying that's not correct? Um, but practice makes perfect. So just if even if you don't have anyone, like look for formats of how the interviews goes and practice with a friend, practice with someone in your school, with someone who might be going through the process as well, so that they can get reps. It's all about repetition. Another strategy towards that, if you are lucky enough to have a few interviews, maybe those that you think are not the best fit for you, try to schedule them early and then leave the ones that you're really interested a little bit later, or like meet in the process, so that you can practice your interview skills with those programs that might not be top of your list, right? You don't want to screw any possibilities, but maybe the one that you know you like the best, you did a rotation over there, you know you like it a little bit better, shouldn't be your first interview, so that you can practice a little bit with the other programs and see yourself within the situation, so that you get a little bit more seasoned to the one that you really want to match towards. And that's a little segue to program selection and signaling. I know it sounds terrible, but we have to be extremely aware that a lot of programs don't like IMGs. And I know and I want you to be aware of that because it's the reality. I also want to give you a little hope, saying that people, when you have the fortune to match, you change people's mind. Your work ethic, your commitment to the specialty, your love for what you do is going to have them change their mind. And I was talking to the people that are lovely prepped for this meeting earlier, and when I interview, John Hopkins didn't take IMGs ever. And after my cycle, they started taking people, and now they're traditionally take IMGs because the first time they match an IMG, they match someone wonderful. And that opened their eyes so that, how it could be. And that's one of the first things a lot of people sometimes are afraid of matching IMGs because they don't know how it is to train an IMG. And that's completely fine, but just know that how it goes within the application cycle. The second thing is matching an IMG also can be very expensive for a program, because if the institution doesn't sponsor visas, most likely it's not going to happen. And a visa costs $10,000. So some institutions don't take IMGs, not because they don't want to, it's because they don't have the budget to do so, right? So that limits our possibilities greatly, unfortunately. And so it's important that you try to apply to those programs take IMGs. That doesn't mean don't apply to the programs you want to apply. That means at least know that certain programs won't be able to sponsor your visa if you need a visa. And so sometimes that might not be the best way to use your money applying for those programs, right? There are services out there that tell you which programs you can go each one-to-one on Frida or Residency Explorer, and try to find out who takes IMGs, who doesn't, what is their rate, so that you really apply to those. And one step farther within signaling, that's also very important, right? Because the amount of applications continues to increase every year. Every year we've gotten 100 more than the prior year. Nowadays, signaling is one of the big things we're using to determine who is going to interview with us. And these are my words, but also the words of my program director, Stephanie Rand. If you don't signal us, we're not interviewing you. Okay? And that happened to medical students coming to my rotation, where they thought just because they came to Montefiore, we were going to offer them an interview, and they didn't signal us because they were wasting the signals because they came to us. They didn't get an interview. Signaling, and that's why AAP has extended the signaling. 2 years ago were only 3 signals. The following year were 8. This year, I think, what they say, 12, 15?
It's 20.
20. So we are using the signals to determine who really wants to come to us. And so make sure you know, first and most importantly, for this group of people, who takes IMGs and signal them, right? And second of all, where you would want to go for residency and signal them. Because if you don't signal them, they're not going to look into your application. Okay? So be very strategic, be very smart on how that goes. A little step farther towards that comes with ranking, and it's heartbreaking, heartbreaking. But I've had many mentees who've had 6, 7 interviews and have not matched because of how they rank, right? Maybe I'm gonna give you an example that's not too nice, but Harvard interviewed you, right? But if you're not Harvard quality, like although they interviewed you, they if you know they don't take people like you, they it's a wasted ranking. Or it might hurt your chances to match in a program that has better chances to rank you, right? So you have to be very analytic of how the interviews go and what was the feedback that you got through the interview to understand if they really like you, if you really are a match, if the program director of the people interviewing you feel like you would do a great job there, but also if you feel you would do a great job there. Because if you rank improperly, you won't match. Last year, I had a mentee who had 10 interviews for PM&R. And I don't know how he ranked it because unfortunately, we didn't discuss it. He just told me after. He ranked all the medicine programs after because, he interviewed for some prelims and medicine programs. He matched in his 14th choice. And he had a phenomenal application. But I'm certain he probably ranked where he maybe wanted more to go, but he was not really analytic of where he was a better fit to go, and he might have missed the chance um, to go to where you know it was the best fit for him. Unfortunately, he matched internal medicine instead of PM&R. So the ranking and the analysis of how much you're fit for them, how much are they willing to take you as an IMG is crucial. And it's a hard discussion, but you have to come to reality very soon to understand it. Okay? Sorry, just a message. Um, that's very important of this conversation. Okay. Personal statement. I think I've discussed a little bit about this in communications. As I said before, we get only pieces of paper. There's no humans. There is lack of that, so we need to really try to get the best. Um, as I said at the beginning of this lecture, I don't intend to for my words to be God's words. They're not perfect, but I have kind of a system for personal statements, and I read more than 50 personal statements a year. So like I want to try to catch what, it's interesting. I don't want to be bored reading a personal statement. Everybody had an Achilles injury. Everybody's parent or family member had a stroke, and that's why they know rehab, and that's why they're coming to rehab. Like I've read it so many times, it's exhausting. Um, so instead of like going to the same cliche of saying the same things, use the personal statement to describe the characteristics that make me want to hire you. So I normally tell my mentees, I want to have 5 reasons for you to tell me why should I hire you. Um, I'm gonna go back to this question. This is very interesting, but let's finish this part. So 5 reasons, right? And I already gave you kind of an example for mine. I mentioned in my personal statement I was an opera singer, but was a reason to tell you that I'm a team player, that I like that interdisciplinary like interaction, which is a crucial aspect of being a physiatrist, right? So I was telling you something personal, something about myself, but I used it to describe one characteristic that makes me a good physiatrist. And they read that very well, right? So use your personal statement to create a communication that talks about you, that talks about your qualities that are um specifically linked to physiatry, right? It's not that, oh, I'm cute, I'm a redhead. I don't need to know that. That's not gonna make you a good physiatrist, right? It's those qualities that really link for you to become a physiatrist. So that kind of implies that you have to know what we do, who we are, what are our interests, like what is how we do our job, right? And if you don't have to know this at the beginning, but that's what the rotations are for you to get to know us, for you to get to know what we do, for you to like explore our specialty, right? But when the moment comes to tell me why you want to be a physiatrist, you need to tell me more than just why. Oh, rehab is nice. They have good hours. I like people with MSK stuff. You need to tell me more like I have these qualities that would make me a good physiatrist and I love rehab because of this specific things that align with my perspective. Okay? That's a much better personal statement and much more interesting to read than the just typical things we read all the time. And with the communications, they should remain. Every program or every single program director has a different style. A lot of people don't like many emails. A lot of people like to be communicated. A lot of people like the letter of interest. A lot of people don't like that. So sometimes just you can ask directly. It can be very straightforward and ask like, would you want me to send a follow-up email or not? It's okay to ask directly. People appreciate that you're going to make their life easier. Okay. Um, Before we move on, I want to answer this question from Adra. If a program doesn't offer you an interview, doesn't mean that you're not interested. That is not sometimes directly proportionate. When a program does like offers an interview, what they're telling you is that you are qualified, you are academically qualified to be a resident there. That's the only thing they're telling you. Fit comes with the interview itself. So if a program doesn't offer you an interview, does that mean that you're not academically qualified to be a physiatrist? That's not directly proportionate, but it might be related. And it could be what I said before, right? You could be a phenomenal candidate for the Arkansas program. Arkansas, Little Rock is the only program in Arkansas. And you can be a great candidate because personality-wise, you're good. You might have the score. Um, but Little Rock in Arkansas doesn't sponsor visa. I'm just giving an example. I'm not certain if this information is completely true, but I'm almost certain. If they don't sponsor a visa, they won't be able to offer you an interview because even if they like you a lot, they're not going to be able to hire you if you need a visa. Okay? So don't take it personally if you don't get an interview from a program you really want. There are variables that relate to that. And in pure transparency, it could be comparison to the people applying next to you. And that happened a lot last cycle. I was really helping this person that I thought he was phenomenal. And if I would have screened him, I'd screen him. But then my co-resident got to screen him and he was a chief resident. And he's like, oh, his score is too low. And I'm like, he has a good score. But everybody else that he screened had way higher scores. And so in comparison to whoever screened him, he was the lowest, he was the weakest applicant, and that's why he didn't get an interview until I intervened and then he got an interview. So it's becoming harder, but it doesn't reflect on your qualities and you know opportunities to be a physiatrist. It's just sometimes how this match is cruel and it's difficult. Okay. Let me just try to close this. Okay. Application components and enhancing your CV. Uh, there are like basic stuff that everybody should do. Everybody should be a member of AAPM&R or AAP and show that, you have some connection to the specialty by being a member or participating on any of the activities that are related to that. Because you should show in your CV that you want to be a physiatrist, right? You don't know how many times I've read applications in the screening where like you clearly were applying to three different specialties and it shows there. And I'm not gonna call you. I don't want to train someone who wants to be a surgeon. I don't want to train someone who wants to be an orthopedic doctor. So your CV should try to relay these experiences that link you to the specialty, right? And the way it's written, it needs to be telling me that story. It needs to be grammatically well done without mistakes. And this is from a person who has dyslexia who writes horribly. You need to have it checked from people who speak this language. You need to go through AI, whatever tools you have in the world to make it look beautiful and perfectly written because these people don't want to read a grammatical mistake and be discouraged from a wonderful applicant because they made a mistake like that. Okay. Um, but you can enhance your CV by adding experiences that really show your commitment to the specialty. If there was a group of interest that you join, if you belong to Pathways of PM&R and are leading discussions like this, of course that's huge. You know, if you notice that there is a group for adaptive sports and you committing your time to that and you really learn and loved that for you, put it on your CV and tell me why that was an important experience that, made you think about my specialty for you in the future. Um, if you're a dancer and you want to get involved in dance medicine because it's part of you played sports and you want to be engaged in the care of people playing sports, tell me that should be one of the experiences. It should be coherent with who you are, right? um so it needs to be all well portrayed, beautifully well written, cohesive in your application. Also, simply put in, I don't want to read the biggest paragraph in the world. As I said, we get 600 applications. I do not have time to read, you know, 10 pages per application. That is unrealistic. So, vignettes, simple words. And I know what I'm saying is really hard, right? You want to say something beautifully said, but also concise. That's difficult when you don't know this language. Like I struggled so much with that when I was applying. But I struggled, so I showed many friends many times, how should I write this? For us who have had experiences outside the US in different positions that doesn't exist in the US. I'm gonna give my own example. When I worked in Colombia, I worked as a general practitioner, which is a profession that doesn't exist here, right? When you graduate in your own country, like my country, I worked as a physician right at a med school, right? Some of us have that opportunity, some of us don't. But most people who graduate outside the US have an MD and you can do primary care with that. So I was trying to explain that position, but using the correct word to explain that is very difficult, because it doesn't exist in the United States, right? So some people say physician assistant, some people like, and that is incorrect. You have to be aware of what are the correct words to use that. Words like house staff, physician, primary care physician, right? If you work within a specialty team, I worked with rheumatology. So I was a house staff physician for the rheumatology department, but I was the doctor taking care of the patients. So it needs to be properly said in the application so that they understand this experience, right? If he said something different, they're gonna read it like, oh, He was a medical assistant, a doctor's assistant, a physician assistant. Like you need to use the correct word to say it. Okay? And that's basically it. I talk a lot. I'm sorry, but as you probably can tell, I'm very passionate about this. I really hope this was helpful. I know how scared you are right now, but if you are organized, if you do things correctly, there are great chances. More and more of us are coming into the specialty. The president of the FIT Council, where I am a member, is also an IMG, and she sits in the AMA committee, and we are pushing for other members of the community at AAPM&R and AAP to understand that we bring something wonderful, and we're opening doors for people like you. So it's important that once you get to this path, you do the same. You pay it forward. You try to do the best to like make sure people like you who were struggling too much won't have this issue when they do. Okay?
Thank you so much, Dr. Fuentes, for amazing talk. So we have about 6 minutes till 9 p.m. I just wanted to ask you if you'd have a couple of minutes to answer some additional questions for the
I
attendees.
do. Yes.
Yeah, so
It-
I have certain questions that were submitted through our forms, but they weren't quite addressed in the lecture because we had tight time. I will ask you some of the questions because
For
they might
sure.
be quite relevant for the attendees. So, first one would be, what are the chances of matching for a long YOG, year of graduation IMG, with PM&R experience in their home country?
That's a great question. Um, I do have to say that when you've done rehab residency in your own country, your chances are better. And that comes from experience. As in my program, we've matched people who have been physiatrists for a long time. One of my PGY4s when I was a PGY2, she did residency in Turkey. One of my current PGY1s, she did residency in Turkey as well, and she matched with us. Um, and I've met a few people already like that. Of course, we like that experience because you already know what physiatry is like. You've done it. You probably need to learn how it happens in the US, but it's probably similar or it has a lot of qualities that are compatible. So we like that. So the chance is better when you've done residency before. You just need to make sure that's properly well put in your CV so that I understand you've done residency. I understand that experience that you are a professor, you've done some work. Um, so that comes in that part of the CV. Just make sure it's well written there, it's well explained using the proper words for me to understand what position you had and what you were doing before. Um, it is harder when you've not done it. I applied to residency when I had 7 years of graduation. I think 6 years of graduation. It was tough. It was very, very tough. Um, so the Euro graduation is one very big limiting factor, unfortunately. But if you've done residency, it's different. It is different.
Awesome. So we do have some questions on the chat as well, so I'll address them first. So this year we are having SLOW, which is standardized letter of recommendation for PM&R, which is coming up as a new fire in PM&R applicants. And Devanshi is asking how we should ask for SLOWs, particularly to the physiatrists.
Good. Um, because it's something so new, we don't really know how it's going to portray the role just yet. But I this comes from AAP, and at AAP, all the program director get together and sit down and talk about this. And they made this decision all together. So a lot of them really think this is going to be important, including my program director. Um, so it needs to be when you ask for a slow, basically it's the same as asking for a letter of rec, right? But you need to tell the attending that that's going to be your slow. So it's a different format. right? In a letter of rec in an LOR, I am just writing a a few paragraphs about you and your experiences. So going back to what I said before, for letters in general, like if you're more specific, if it's more intimate, if comes with that experience that you had within the rotation, it's way better. It's more specific. Um, I see. I'm now taking a look at the participants, and I'm seeing so people. This is a message for you, Cece. Like, take a look what you're going through in our rotation with us right now, right? What's happening, what you're liking, how have those interactions been? So when you ask for a letter specifically, you know, I was with Dr. X and X and it was great and we did this and I got the chance to see this unique procedure, intervention, something, interaction with a patient that was amazing. Like use that as labor. So that might be a little different with the slow. You can try to use it, but the slow has a format. I downloaded the format yesterday to try to look into it because I knew today we were going to talk about it. Um, and it's more is asking me directly as a letter writer if I think you're ready to be a resident. If I think you've had enough exposure, right? So of course this law has to be a physiatrist. So the better or the more experienced the physiatrist it is, the better for you. And I would ask for the slow to the person who you've spent the most time with, who knows you the most, who maybe saw you taking a patient, do an interview, do a procedure, do a physical exam so that they can really talk about you in a proper way. Um, but it's going to be for you guys more like just requesting a letter of rec in general, like a LOR.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So now it's 9 p.m. and I know that we have so many questions for Dr. Fuentes, um, but he should be really busy. And I just wanted to ask if you'd just feel free to answer, no pressure at all. If you'd like to answer more questions, or should we wrap up right here?
We can do a few more questions.
All right, just then I'll
Hi,
just do
Kelvin. Oh my gosh. I'm reading and I know some people like, and so it's very sweet to see them
Of
here.
course,
It's,
yeah. Then I'll just have additional 10 minutes or so from you, Dr. Fuentes. Thank you so,
sure.
so much for being here. So I see more chats on the questions on the chat. Citron was asking if would it be okay to attend AAPM&R or AAP without presenting just for networking? And
It
how
is.
would you suggest to network at such a huge conference?
It is okay to go in network, even if you're not presenting. And at AAP and AAPM&R, there is a space dedicated for students where you will meet some program directors. Um, do not go to the job fair. The job fair is not for students, and I know everybody tries to go to job fair, maybe a little bit towards the end, but the job fair is really not for students. And a lot of program directors hate seeing students there because it takes a lot of their time when they're trying to recruit PGY threes and fours that are looking for jobs. Um, so try the interactions to be more casual through the conference. If you see that a program director is participating or giving a lecture, go to that lecture, and try to approach them at the end. Try to, if you see them in a hallway, you see them in the what is that called? The great hall, like where all the exhibitions, the exhibition hall is. Just say hi, hey, nice to meet you. I'm, SJ. I'm applying this cycle. I am going to be in your rotation this time, or I just came from a rotation. I loved it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Just want to say hi and tell you how much I'm enjoying the conference. You know, um, simple things, be very straightforward, very professional, but say something. And I know it's terrifying. Not everybody has like a big, huge personality like I do. But you have to try. You have to try. You have to look for those opportunities.
All right, so we have one more question, a lot of more questions, but just one of them. How important are medical school scores? I think this relates to one of our questions that were submitted through our form, which was, what is a good score for step two? The answer might vary person by person, of course, but they will be curious about your opinion, Dr. Fuentes, but no pressure at
Yeah,
all, as always.
I am. We in Montefiore PM&R have really, 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 really tried not to set up a cutoff. So at least for us, we really try not to set up a cutoff. Um, in pure honesty, we are using more signaling. So we try to screen you. If you like me, I like you through the signaling. And that's how we filter last year. But I know other programs. I'm very good friends with the program director of Burke, and he uses a score. Um, they don't set up terribly high scores to 10 to 20. Sometimes it's okay. Uh, but I didn't have that score. So I would have not matched presidency in this climate. This is pure honesty. Um, and so I know it's terrifying. I really do. And I wish it was not like that, you know? And I can assure you it can be revoked if you have someone who speaks for you, if you meet someone in person, if you had a rotation and you do a good job, you're showing interest, your personality really shows through the experience. It can be different in that way. But unfortunately, because you know a lot of people are applying with amazing scores now, it plays a role. It's the reality. And so study hard, study really hard to try to get a good score. That's what I can say.
Thank you so much. It might have been a really hard question to ask, but you did wonderful. Um, I would ask one more question from the form that was submitted. Should we send thank you letters, letters of interest, or letters of intent after interview invitation or after submitting our ERAS app, etc.?
Okay, I think it's hard after submitting your ERS app because we what happens after September 15 and we get the applications is like overwhelming. Again, we get 600 applications, right? At least my program. So it's crazy. And then after that, having to go through emails is just excessive. Um, I do personally believe that you should send a letter of intent when you're ranking. And I hope it comes from your heart and honesty to tell me why you want to come here. I feel like people read that very well, including my program. I and this is I shouldn't be saying much of this, but Dr. Ryan really doesn't like those, honestly. There are some program directors who don't like them, and that's okay. And that's what I said a little bit before. Ask. You can ask at the end, is it okay if I send a letter? Is it okay if I send an email? You know, and some of them will tell you, no, it's fine. You don't need to. Or it's okay. And then you can send something. But if you're going to do it, it needs to be intentional. Again, my experience. My program director at the time was not, it was a different person. He loved opera. So we had an interview where we only talked about opera. There was no PM&R. It was pure opera. We talked about characters and stuff. And anyways, my letter of it, like my thank you letter was like, oh my God, I love meeting you. I really hope we can see an opera together in the future or something crazy like that. It was very personable because it was intended for him to remember me, the opera person, right? And I can assure you it worked because he ranked me high in IMAX, right? So if you do something really intentional like that, it will help. But if you're uncertain of doing it, if it's just, oh, thank you, that was nice, don't send it. It needs to be meaningful, substantial. if you're going to do it, and if you're feeling that they might not receive it or whatever, just ask, is this worth it? Do you want me to send something or not? Is that okay?
Awesome, thank you. One more question. If not applying to a categorical PM&R program, what is the best way to apply separately to intern year?
Oh, that is the most difficult question ever. That is tough. Okay, I struggle a lot. I didn't match for intern year. I didn't soap. Then it was after, for me, it was a mess. So really read into it, look on Reddit, look like really dig into how the process is done. Hopefully, if you're great, have a letter from medicine that you use for those applications, um, for both like medicine years or transitional years, or if you're applying surgery, that also helps. Um, so a letter from the own specialty is very helpful. Um, Over apply. I know, and I hate saying this because it's so expensive and I really hate it. They're the worst for charging us so much money to do that. But I applied to every single program in PM&R in the United States, and I only did 20 prelims and I had zero interviews, and it was a nightmare. So try to apply to more. Again, considering if they're friendly for IMGs, if they sponsor visas, if you need one, um, if they have connections through your program, if not, if location is convenient, all the other variables. If you know someone in the program that who can like have a good word, whatever. When you're going to an interview for PM&R, ask them, is there a program that you recommend to apply to? Even if you applied later, it's completely fine. Just those kind of things are helpful. But it is a very difficult thing. And because of that, more and more programs are eliminating the advanced positions. You'll see it. We did it. We were all advanced, and then when I match, and then we got four, and we increased one, and we might increase another one. And so we have now more categoricals than advanced. And UT Southwestern, I just read this week, eliminated all their advanced positions. So the field is changing a little bit towards that, but we still have to like face that challenge of applying both categorical and advanced. And so that means be prepared to apply to a lot of programs. Do your research for those specific programs and try to make connections that will help.
Awesome. So now that it's 9:10, it's time to Oh, yeah. So there are so many thank yous for you on the chat, Dr. Fuentes, and thank you so much for joining us in Pathways and PM&R, because this is our first team for only dedicated for IMGs, and it really means a lot that an IMG resident like you is supporting us. Yeah, it is time to wrap up. And yeah, again, taking your time to speak with us. So thank you so much, Dr. Fuentes. And
No
thank you
problem.
anyone who joined us live. If you'd like to, revisit the talk or share it with others, the recording will be posted soon on Pathways YouTube and the website, so check it out. We hope to see you again at a future event, which comes really soon. Next month, we have a PD panel. So keep your eye on it out and have the great rest of your day and night. Thank you so much again and again, Dr. Fuentes, and good night,
Thank you.
everybody, and good
Good
day,
night.
everybody.
Thank you for your
Thank you
time.
so much. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye bye.